Hello, everyone, and welcome to yet another OPN Dev Talk. I am still, unfortunately, your host, Steven. I also troll people online under Slave to Machine on Steam. And today I have the utmost pleasure of talking to the developer of Linelight. It's a game that not recently, got greenlit on Steam. A wonderful little, I'm not even sure how to explain it, but that's why we have this fellow right here, Brett Taylor, to talk about it. Before we get into that, I keep those false starts. Before I get into that, if you're just joining us and you've never seen us before, we are a community of gamers for gamers. I know it sounds like a marketing spiel. It is. Because what we do is we go through the indie development scene and we bring the developers a little closer to the gamers. That's the whole point of these dev talks. So, that being said, let me get right into it. Brett, thank you first off for joining us. That's a fantastic china cabinet.
Thank you. It's my work china cabinet, and I think maybe once in my life I've eaten off of one of those plates. Probably. It's just a thing that exists behind me that sometimes people mention while I'm on video chats, and I never notice. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now. I just heard, and it's just, and then you kind of went silent.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh, no, thing that's behind.
And you're mute again.
Really?
Yeah, now you're good. Don't move. Just stay there for the rest of the time.
Okay.
All right, so, technical difficulties. Anyway, let's get right into it, though. Limelight, how would you explain it? What's the elevator pitch for Limelight, essentially?
Okay. So Linelight is a minimalist puzzle game where the core design ethic is reduce until another reduction would remove what makes the puzzle exist in the first place. And that's the most accurate, I guess, way to describe it succinctly. It is a puzzle game where everything takes place on lines, and it's all about minimalism, basically, and cohesion and elegance and fun stuff like that.
Okay. So in this world, I'm just going to get right into it. In this world where everything is super happy dude bro shooter 2016, in the world of Doom just recently released, and we like stuff that explodes, Limelight is kind of a weird entry. I don't want to say weird as in there's something wrong with it. I mean weird as in we don't see something like this. Not only is it low on graphics, although what's there is phenomenal. It's not one of those situations where you're going to get wowed by the look of it. What was the decision, or what decisions, or what did you go through in order to make that decision of a minimalist game?
I mean, the initial idea for Limelight was, what if everything takes place on a line? Started out as a programming project, and I sort of took it from there. It felt like that itself was just such a natural fit for minimalism in like puzzle design. Also, like I've always really been attracted to minimalist puzzle design, or at least like just as simple elements as possible, because the joy of solving puzzles and like that aha moment is like that. I don't like it so much when it's obfuscated. I've played games where that's like there's noise put between the player and the solution to the puzzle, and that sort of takes away from like my favorite moments of the game. So there were I feel like there were several questions in one. Can you just
There were.
Yeah. Just recap a little bit further.
Okay, so in a world where we have super high end photorealistic graphics, essentially, why this?
Look so simple. Because you're looking at the entire Limelight development team. That is one of the big reasons. I just don't have the resources to make to make a crazy amount of art. So what I'm doing throughout development is sort of like it's I don't know. It's one of my strategies, which is just do things to the absolute bare minimum possible, but not more. No, that's probably a better way to phrase it. But
Yeah.
basically, it's like I feel like cutting corners has like a bad connotation, but it's honestly like what's the bare minimum that needs to be there? All right, that's what's going in, and then once it hits that level, then it's basically good. So essentially, the visuals of the game now, I'd like to improve them before release, at least a little bit more. But the visuals, sort of how they got there is I just I basically said, okay, what's the least amount of effort that I can put in to make the game to make me not dislike the look of the game.
Okay.
I know that's like I know that's kind of like a weird statement, but that's honestly that's the reason. I mean, I don't really look around for artistically. Like speaking of the visuals of the game, I don't really look around me at like other games, at least not consciously or like intentionally. I don't look at other games to try to see like, hey, what are these guys doing? What could be interesting? A lot of like just specifically artistically, because I am doing everything, is just like what can I get done? What is something that is possible for me to get done? And that's much like narrower scope.
Well, we've talked to a lot of developers in the last couple of years, and what's interesting is that some of the most gorgeous games, not to discount any of the others, but many of the most gorgeous games just come out of one person. When you first started this project, did you intend to have it be just a one-man development team? Did you tell us a little bit about the building of the game, the early stages? Was there ever a time where you thought, I need more people on this thing?
Um, I've always been a one man band, very much so. That said, I've worked with teams before, and there's some people I work very well with. There's yeah, I've had like one or two experiences of like team members that I've really clicked with. Most of the time, it's like I'm sort of a little bit, I guess, bullheaded is maybe like an okay word to use. Or I'm like I I can be stubborn, and I'm aware of it. But I to summarize, basically, I enjoy actually working alone. I like to be able to take like the vision that I have and kind of have nobody like filter it. And it's sort of I feel like it sounds a little bit selfish, and maybe it is, but that's just one of my preferred work styles. It's not like, as if I don't like a variety, like changing that up and like working with teams every once in a while, particularly like in game jams or something. But for like a long term project like this is a really sustained vision. And also, I don't know if I'm going to like find anybody else who's quite as excited and like gung ho about it as I am. Um, yeah. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. It does. And I don't think there's anything wrong, personally. I don't think there's anything wrong with being a one-man band. Again, a lot of developers, they have a vision, they have an idea, and to explain that to other people is incredibly difficult. We've seen some devs that are great at the explanation, but bad at implementation. And we see some devs that are absolutely phenomenal with code, but they just can't get the words to explain it to somebody else. Were but were there any points when you were telling somebody else and they're like, I just don't get it? What do you want to do?
Where I was
Yeah.
explaining the game without being able to show it and having people not understand.
Basically, you're giving someone a concept, or you're saying, hey, I'm making a game. And usually the other half of that goes, okay, cool, what's it about? And then when you explain it, did you have to explain it to a lot of people, or did they just all go, you're doing what?
I mean, it's not as if that like only happened early in development. Like now, people, I just was like at a high school reunion yesterday, and people are like, "Hey, what are you doing
Yeah.
now?" And I'm like, "Man, I still don't have my elevator pitch like nailed down to the point where maybe it's actually totally fine, but I'm just not confident with it.
Yeah.
But yeah, like describing what makes Limelight cool is it's challenging because it's so. The best way to experience Limelight is to like or to like understand it is to actually experience it. Like you can look at screenshots and GIFs or even better, and like a video, would be probably like the next best thing. But the best way to digest and understand what it's about and like what makes it actually fun is to play it yourself because the joy of the game is what goes on in the player's head. That's kind of like that's a it's not like an easy one sentence thing to like give to somebody where it's like hey it's like this game plus this game in space or something like that which would be like that's oh okay I understand exactly what that is but there's not really there aren't I guess immediate comparisons to draw to Limelight that I've been able to use so I've sort of I guess struggled a little bit with how to define it to people.
Yeah.
Also, you were sort of talking about like how did I describe it to people early on?
Yeah.
I I never really like it wasn't like I knew what the end product would be. I was just like going off of like what I found interesting at the time, and was just sort of like digging up where I thought there would be gems and whatever, and like sort of exploring the game on my own. So I didn't actually know where I was going to end up necessarily, actually like at all. I mean, the only thing that's been consistent from the beginning has just been the lines part. Like that's pretty much the only thing that's stuck. I didn't even know if it was going to be a puzzle game. I wanted it to be a puzzle game, and it turned out to be mostly a puzzle game. But I wasn't sure exactly where Limelight would go. But that was that was almost a year ago. It was like around September or so.
Yeah, because this is definitely a game. I know it sounds like hyperbole, but there really kind of is no equal. On one hand, when I first saw the trailer about a week or so ago, I saw it and I'm like, is this is this a cause and effect type of game? Is this a, if I move myself here, this is what will happen? I almost kind of felt like it was following like the path of an electrical circuit where it would trip something and then something else would happen in the puzzle and then you had to figure out how to get from point A to point B. Standard puzzle fare. But I really don't see a lot of other games out there doing this. What kind of games do you play in your copious amount of free time? Because developers have a lot of free time. Sure, they do. Uh,
Yes.
were there any games that you were playing that kind of helped move this project along, where you actually decided, yeah, this is what I want to do, or were you, or were you just kind of a critical gamer who looks at the flaws of the game and go, I can do this so much better?
Um, I think a lot of it is really like me playing really great puzzle games, like experiencing great puzzle games, and saying, "Wow, this is like I love this. I want to do my own, version of this or whatever."
Mhm.
Yeah, I think that's really more where it came from. It's not as if I played like I wasn't like playing some puzzle indie game and I was like, oh wow, like how can I do this better? Like or this is really good, but I want to see if I can improve on this formula. There's no one specific thing to really bring it back to, but I think it was just um, the reason that I'm making Limelight is just because I love the process of it. I love, which is not too conducive to like having to put a hard deadline on finishing it. But I love the process of developing and designing these puzzles because they're just some of them are just so like if the player gets like 10% of like the ecstasy that I feel like when I create some of these puzzles when they solve it, then I'm so happy. But yeah, it's so some games that have influenced me. Braid like was a huge one. That's Braid was probably like you know uh, between like Braid and World of Goo, more so Braid because of its style of puzzle design. That was like made me really want to get into like indie gaming basically. I knew I always liked video games, but uh, after experiencing Braid, I was like, this is like the coolest thing. And I actually did make I made one of my first big projects was called Scalia, and it's
Mhm.
Braid manipulates time, Scalia manipulates space. So it's like, what if you could change the size of objects and stuff? Um, and that was I don't know, that was like 7 something years ago. That was a while ago. But yeah, so I've been making things since then. But the question is, what games do I play in my spare time? I guess that influenced me.
Yeah.
I mean, it's tricky. I feel like an obligatory one to mention is probably The Witness, just because it. Although most of Limelight was like designed before The Witness came out, I feel like like there must have been some sort of correlation in my subconscious that was like, hey, lines, and I was like seeing them. I saw like a trailer for The Witness a few years ago. Maybe
Yeah.
not. I don't know. But games that I play that influenced my style of design. It's so hard for me to answer that with confidence because the way that I design puzzles for Limelight is it doesn't really work like that. It's more of I've created these mechanics that are just they're sort of in ways that my brain works nicely or whatever. So like, hey, spatial and like blah blah, like this is time based, etc. Whatever. Like mechanics that make sense to me. And then I just put them in a room together, and I'm like, "Hey, guys, have a conversation." And then they start saying these crazy things. I was like, "Whoa, what did you just say? Wow, you're really cool." And like when you two talk, this is nuts. Wait, what if I put these three together? And then they're like, they've got this weird conversation, metaphors here. That's really how like most of the puzzles came to be, and most of the designing of the game came to be, where I sort of gave it its limbs, and then said, "All right, what do you want to do?" And then did my best to listen to what the game wanted to become. It wasn't so much of like taking concepts from other games or like even abstract concepts and sort of implementing them. That said, I did experience Steven's Sausage Roll for the first time. I think it was probably about a month ago at this point. And I was like, wow, like this game makes Limelight look like it's for like kindergartners. Have you heard of Steven's Sausage Roll?
I have. I have.
Yeah, so it's this insanely hard game. That actually did have a small influence on me where I realized, hey, it's okay to have really, really hard puzzles at some point in the game. Whether or not Limelight can produce those is one thing, but that's sort of uh, but I feel like that's like the only thing. That's the only concrete example I can actually point to. It's been like a some sort of influence.
That's understandable. There's a lot of abstract puzzle games that are floating around on Steam, but there are also other platforms aside from Steam. I know that's hard for some people to understand. What with Desura and GOG, we were just talking to a fellow yesterday. Treasure Adventure World or Treasure Adventure Game, nice little platformer that's a throwback to the old Mario games, and he had never actually been released on Steam, and yet he got so much praise and so much interest from that. Do you feel that the current environment on Steam, and this is kind of a cynical question, do you think that the current environment on Steam, because we always hear about the Gamergate, we hear about the anger, the resentment, the hatred, the trolling, is this a game that can exist well on Steam? Because you went through Steam Greenlight, you got the green light, and now the question is it going to be something that you think could be welcomed on Steam as a nice breath of fresh air for some of the others, or is that kind of too much self-aggrandizement?
Um, I mean, I don't feel like I have enough information to answer the question
Okay.
with complete accuracy, but I will say that I would be extremely surprised if it weren't.
Okay.
But that's based on just sort of my like the reception that Linelight's gotten over the last several months when
Yeah.
it's mostly like near a finished state.
Yeah. Because
At least,
you went to PAX,
yeah,
right? How was that? How was that experience for you? Was that the first PAX you'd ever been to?
yeah, that was my first PAX actually.
Okay.
So I thought GDC, like I don't know where I got this information from. I just assumed that GDC was bigger than PAX, and I've been to GDC. March was my third time.
Yeah.
And yeah, PAX, I was like, holy crap, this is ridiculous. So GDC is about 25,000 people. PAX is 70,000 attendees, something
Yeah.
like that. So
It's
it was
it's
like,
kind of a big deal. Yeah.
yeah, like I got to the expo floor. I'm like, where does it end? It's just like this nonstop, just like pretty much you could see the horizon and there's still games on the horizon.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's kind of what it feels like. PAX was it was it was a wonderful experience. First off, it was also a little bit like I guess overwhelming is probably like an
Mhm.
accurate word to use, just because there's so much stimulus. It was also the the largest expo that I've shown Limelight at so far over the last I'd say like between like February, April, March and April. I showed Limelight about every weekend or every other week, just at some event somewhere. Roughly about that much. And PAX, was this giant thing. Is your question like how was the experience in general?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Well, that's
It
the
was
first one. There's like four parts to this question,
uh,
so let's start with that one. How was the experience?
the experience was wonderful. It's also like okay. I don't know how to say this without like. All right, but I'll just say it anyway. It's kind of like almost unsettling how ubiquitously unanimously positive the feedback for Limelight has been. Like there's from people like literally the only people who have given constructive feedback or any feedback that's not just like I really like it have been game designers who
Mhm.
like puzzle designers who actually do this and can like look in and like see the flaws and I'm like it's sort of like uh for all you coders out there, I guess it's like when you like type it in whatever all this stuff and you're like then you just hit run and it all works and you're like it's too quiet in here, this isn't like this,
Yes.
something's got to be wrong, basically. But I mean, it's been happening frequently and like for long enough that like no, literally, I think there was one person. I've play tested Limelight with hundreds and hundreds of people. There was only one person who actually like was playing for a little bit and then was just like, and then like put down the controller after about 2 minutes. But they still got 2 minutes into it, and they also just seemed to be having a very bad day in general. Um, but yeah, like literally, it's almost everybody really enjoys Limelight, and it's and I got a lot more of that like confirmation from PAX. At the same time, I also like part of me like is like hey, don't take it to heart too much. You don't want to like lower your standards just because of other people think it's great, but that's just me being me.
That's totally fair. So it's one of those things where again, in the gaming um, press and just gaming in general, people tend to focus on the negative. In fact, admittedly, a lot of the questions have been kind of toward the negative because when it comes to indie devs or indie gaming, we're so used to seeing people say pushing out a bunch of asset packs and shoving it on Greenlight and it gets pushed through because of social engineering. Maybe they went to Reddit and it was a joke game. Like for example, not to knock on it, but the one note jokes that have been super popular, like I Am Bread and Goat Simulator, they're games that on the surface they're funny, they're kind of shallow, but people like it. So it's almost like one of those things where do you see Limelight existing in the current microcosm of indie development or indie games when it is finally released?
First off, release. I'm aiming for end of September. That's a couple months away.
Yeah.
But where do I see Limelight? I mean, okay, so compared to the sort of like one-off jokes, like I have nothing against any of those games. And sort of like the difference between, um, I mean, they serve a specific purpose. It's like they're appropriate for the time that they exist in. They have a spike in popularity, but then the popularity drops off fairly quickly, and that's just sort of the behavior of like how people approach these games. I've never really been interested in making games like that because it doesn't feel. This is just me, my personal thing, because it doesn't feel sustainable enough. I'd like to make something that I'd like to make something that's timeless. No, but I'd like to make something that at least I can still. I want to make something where I can look back 10 years from now and still say like, damn, that was like really. There's some really great stuff in there. Like albeit some flaws, like will come up in retrospect, but still like that's my goal. And it's still something that I can enjoy, 10 years from now. Is that an answer to your question?
It's one of the answers, yeah. The fun part about these is that as the answers are given, because everybody has a different incentive to make a game. Some people want to try and dethrone Mario. Some people want to throw out. I've honestly heard that on this show. I've heard people say something to the effect of that their game is the best one ever because, and then there's no reasons after that. It just is because of the bias, the inherent bias of the creator. Of course, they think their child is going to be the best thing ever.
My kid's the smartest kid in the class.
Yeah, exactly. And then it gets released, and then we hear a lot of follow-ups like, "Oh, they just didn't understand," or it's like the Steve Jobs, they just weren't holding the phone correctly type of thing. So getting back to that, like I said, a lot of the most popular games out there right now are the dude bro shooters, which have their place. But with Limelight, it's one of those things where you have to have a deep love of puzzle games to start with. And unlike a lot of puzzle games, there's not much here. It again, you said very minimalist. Is this something? Do you even care if it sells like 1,000,000 units, or is it just the fact that you have created something and that you threw it out there? What's that?
So first, actually, I would like to say, Limelight is not. I don't know how it represents itself to people, or how I have made it represent itself to people, or even how I want to modify that.
Yeah.
But Limelight, I'll put it this way.
Okay.
I've had an uncountable amount of people tell me I can't play video games. I don't know how to. I don't like puzzle games. I don't know anything about video games. I've never played them before.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, try it. And I just give them the controller and I start them from the very first level. What Linelight does is, this is sort of like incidental. I didn't realize I was doing this at the time, but what I could look back and I see is Linelight, like every single level, it starts with literally you just move, and you're like rewarded just a little bit for that, and it just gives this tiniest incremental steps to get you to very sophisticated places, and everybody is able to get to those sophisticated places because although the way that the game onboards you to get there, so it's actually not. It's not a game that's for puzzle gamers necessarily. I was talking to, I forget who I was talking to, but this was about a week or two ago, and I realized I feel like Limelight is okay. I don't like speaking like so strongly, especially about things that I work on, but I feel like it's one of like the ultimate gateways into puzzle games because of its high accessibility. Like I haven't seen any game, like I could be completely off the mark on this, and I'm totally ready for that. But from the information that I have and from what I've seen about puzzle games, I haven't seen a puzzle game that is quite as accessible as Limelight. I feel like that's probably not true. But let's just say it's like, in my experience, is one of the most accessible ones. Anyway, but the point basically there is, I do want to mention like that it's not specifically for people who love puzzle games. If you like puzzle games, you'll love like especially some of the later puzzles get like crazy cerebral.
Yeah.
But it's like, okay, my dad can play it. My dad cannot like use a remote control. Like he'll ask me to change the input on the TV, but my dad is able to play through Limelight because it's just a joystick movement. That's all you have to do. Like, you could play it with your foot.
Mhm.
Yeah, actually, you could totally play it with your foot. It might not be comfortable. You could do it. Anyway, yeah. So that I just wanted to say that. So what was the second part? To can you just recap the second part?
Yeah, basically, actually, let's forget the second part because that kind of opens it up to a whole new way. The main question was, is it a situation where this is a game where you don't care if you sell 1 million units? I mean, you'd love to, right? But is this a situation where you actually don't care? You're just putting your creation out in the world because it needs to be there? Do you feel that in regarding your father, is this a situation where puzzle games are not as easy to experience for most people, and that this is, like you said, the gateway? This is a puzzle game for people that aren't really gamers. This is a puzzle game for people that don't even really like playing puzzles, but there's something infectious about this. I mean, if he can't change the input on the TV, yet he plays through this, it was that the moment where you thought, I know this is exactly what I'm doing. I know exactly what I'm doing, and it's working.
No.
Or is it the bias because he's your father?
Uh, Also, his reaction to the game and how much he enjoys it is tremendously biased.
Yeah.
Also very entertaining.
Yeah.
But no, like it's only in retrospect and in talking with people about how accessible the game is that I've sort of realized like what I've got in my hands here. It was like, it's always just sort of been for me like a breath of fresh air compared to the last, so I worked at a casual gaming company where like the games that I was developing, we would have to we'd have to explain to the player how to play the game, like how a tremendous amount of games work, like
Right.
pretty much every
Tutorial
game.
section,
Well,
at least.
exactly. But Limelight didn't really need that because everybody already knows how to play, and that's sort of that's one, like I knew that from the start. I didn't realize the breadth of its accessibility. Yeah.
Okay. So tell me a little bit about, we're going to jump back briefly. You said that you had been part of a development team before. Tell us a little bit about that experience, because we do have a lot of wannabe developers. I don't want to say armchair developers, but we have a lot of people that watch these shows and they think, development's so hard. I got to go to school. I got to meet up with the right people. I got to get seed funding. I got to do this. I got to do that. So tell me a little bit about your experiences before striking out as this lone wolf, I'm going to do it all developer.
Lone wolf, I like it.
You're welcome.
Uh, so basically, are you asking like speaking to prospective developers or people who want to, like, they're maybe curious about development? Is that sort of what you're talking about?
Yes to all of it. You
Okay.
said that you worked on a development team before. What kind of things were you doing, and how did you get into that world before this one?
I feel like the answer I'm most compelled to give is basically. So somebody texted me. I think this was yesterday, or the day before, and he mentioned like, "Wow, it's like really cool that you're doing this. I just saw the article on Polygon. Congrats. I wish I could commit myself to doing this, to like completing a game and then making it, but I don't know how to code." And I'm like, well, yeah, if you try to swallow like an entire hamburger at once, you're gonna choke, or you just can't do that. It's like unrealistic, or it's like you can't create an entire game. Like you're probably not going to create an entire game in your first try. Where I started was just out of sort of like Elizabeth Gilbert's theory on curiosity, where like if you follow your curiosity, that is what may lead you to your passion. And also curiosity versus passion. So passion is like abandon your family and like move to whatever Tibet and like just do your own thing or whatever. Or it could also be seen as like leave the company that you were working at, move back in with your dad to save money and develop your own game completely alone. Like
Not that situation, of course, ever happens. Not
not
that.
that that happens. Not that that happens at all.
No.
But curiosity is so much more accessible. Curiosity is just like, hey, is this interesting? Let me just like go after like this tiny little nugget. Ooh, that's kind of neat. Let me sort of travel in this direction, et cetera, et cetera. I got into programming because of curiosity, because I didn't know where I was going to end up. I didn't know that I was definitely going to do this, but I knew that I was interested and curious about what I was working on at the time. So what I would recommend to people who are interested in becoming developers, first off, if you've never tried like coding before, just try it out, like mess around. I don't know, like look at some YouTube tutorials, try to find a way to make it fun. Challenge yourself, see if you can get like a rectangle to move across the screen. Uh, if if you're unwilling to reward yourself for small increments of progress, such as like, hey, I changed the color of this box that's whatever, like in the canvas. If you like, if you don't reward yourself, then it's not going to be a very fun experience. If you say, if the only way that you're like allowed to be satisfied with, the experience you've had is if you've made, this whatever, like a side-scrolling platformer that has enemies and collision detection, all that stuff, then it's like that. It's not realistic, and it's not sort of conducive to getting to that point. You got to start somewhere, and enjoy the process along the way. And that's sort of how I got into game development as well. I mean, actually, like I went to grad school at Teachers College, and which is obviously like it's a teaching school.
Yes.
Just because I was curious in like psychology and how people think and process information, and that was something that really interested me. And I knew that video games was always like something that I would like that combined a lot of the things that I like doing together. But I didn't know, like there was no guarantee of exactly where I was going to end up. Yeah. So first off, is that an answer to one of the parts of the question?
It's in there somewhere, I'm sure.
Okay.
Either way, it really is a situation where there's just so much for a minimalist game. There's just so many different branching paths to take a conversation about said game, even though to most people it might not look like much. In the grand scheme of things, there's a lot that goes into it. For example, I would think, just from my own experience, if this isn't the best example of a Pavlovian type of experiment, this kind of game, where if you make this thing happen, you get rewarded by getting to the end of it. That's most games in general, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so with this, not only it almost feels like it's a perfect storm of indie development. It's simplistic. There's not enough to distract someone other than the shiny bright colors. It's very easy to pick up. Even though you made a lot of these puzzles, are there any that still kind of get you? It's kind of hard to say since you're the one that made it all, but are there any that you look at the puzzle and you go, this is going to be tough?
For me to like,
for you, probably not, because you've probably seen the game, you've tested it yourself, you've been your own QA. But when watching somebody play it, do you just get that rush of adrenaline, like, oh my god, I made this, and they're not going to get past this puzzle?
Like good adrenaline?
Good adrenaline from seeing your creation being played by someone else, because isn't that kind of what all developers hope for? Yeah, I'm not saying you're a masochist. And that you like seeing other people suffer with trying to get through your game, but that moment of knowing that the thing that you gave birth to, this thing that came screaming into the world,
giving some joy, basically.
Yes.
Yeah. So actually, the place where I started out was every time I play tested, the moment a player got stuck or there was any friction or barrier from them getting to the solution within more than a few moments, I would reduce the friction. I would remove the barrier, and I would basically I like continuously nerfed and like just brought down the difficulty of the levels, especially like the beginning ones, like crazy. And that I realized, like after having conversations with people, like I mentioned this happened more than once probably, where I said to the playtester, "This is too hard. I'm actually going to simplify this," and they responded with, "No, no, no. I like the challenge." And I was like, "No, you don't. Like, why would like I know what you want. You don't know what you want." And then eventually, like I heard that enough times where I was like, "Oh, people actually do like the challenge." So what I've tried to do. Then I pulled back from making it too easy, and now there are moments in the game intentionally that I put in that I want the player to spend X amount of time here. I do want them to hit small walls because it's very rewarding to be a little bit like to be stumped and then to succeed, but not long enough for them to get frustrated. Like I don't want them to get frustrated. Maybe like a little bit of frustration is okay, and that's just sort of I guess collateral for the rest of people who don't have that frustration, but. Yes, I want to keep them in sort of that comfortable state where they're not bored. It's not too easy, but it's also not so hard that they're like, banging their head against the wall. One of the things that I love in watching playtesters is just watching especially like watching expressive people. I don't like having a preference for. I don't like the fact that I have a preference for playtesters that I watch, but I do. I would prefer to watch somebody who like emotes a lot. And my personal favorite is watching two people interact because they collude with each other, and like one will like point over here and like they'll whisper something to the other person. Actually, there were a lot of couples came at PAX more than like any other conference. I guess PAX is a place for couples, of course, as everybody would think it would be. But yeah, a lot of couples came to play the game, and they that experience happened a lot, and that's always fun to watch. Yeah.
Okay. Because there are a lot of games, again, to keep referring back, there are a lot of puzzle games that almost kind of relish in the idea of having this puzzle, or at least one or two levels where it totally messes someone up, and then it kind of does ruin the game. A lot of times we'll hear people talk about, oh, it's so simple, and then at the same time we hear people say, oh, I really want a hard puzzle. How hard was it to try and get that sweet spot?
Um, it's hard to isolate that. It's hard to like extract that from the rest of the design of like the level design of difficulty. I don't know if I don't feel like I have an answer for that question. I feel like I'm supposed to, but I actually don't. It's just a lot of like like I'll have people play test it. Um, I've rarely had I've rarely made things harder because I saw people having too much of an easy time. Uh, Honestly, a lot of what it was is that anytime I would like wherever I would see drop offs or wherever I would see people stop having fun, I'd say, okay, that's a place to address, and I would change it. And I just did that enough times where I streamlined it like crazy. To the point where now, like the PAX build the build I have for PAX, I was doing like I was pretty much like rejiggering the entire most of the world like before each right before each conference I did, but the PAX build like that sort of hit the sweet spot for all the things I learned over the last couple of months. I don't feel like that answers your question.
It does and it doesn't, and that's totally okay. My near the end of the question, though, you already mentioned that the game is going to be released later this year, hopefully, right? Or is that kind of set in stone?
It's set in stone. I will release. I wrote this down yesterday. I would
September, right? September 2016?
Yeah, September 2016. I'm gonna say September 30th.
Okay.
Be released. I don't know. The thing is, I don't want to like say that's the exact date because I may like it may be a little bit less than that, but I don't want it to be later than that. But so I honestly, actually, I want to finish the game by July 31st, have it all done. Then there's a 2-month review process for PlayStation. It takes about 1 to 2 months, and I want to budget that time.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to be like late on this. Anyway, so that's like sort of my hard date, and I've like listed all the essential things that have to happen for the game to be done. And I literally just earlier today, I was like, all right, these weeks, this is how everything fits into the puzzle piece. I was like, finally being the producer that Linelight has not had for a while, because it's way more fun to just develop the game. But yeah, to figure that out. Again, I feel like I lost your question.
No, not at all, not at all. So it's going to be released, give or take, September-ish 2016
Yeah.
for definite. It's going to be released on what platforms? Is it Steam? You plan on going to consoles with this?
Steam and PlayStation 4. So I'm in the
nice.
My little puppy is here. Hi, Zoro.
Aw. Bring him on. Hi. Aw.
Yeah, that's Zoro. He's awesome. Almost a year, Black Lab. There we go. So yeah, Steam and PlayStation 4. As far as everybody's like, hey, what about mobile? What about iOS? Maybe. But I'm not going to focus on that, or I'm also not going to focus on Xbox One either until or Wii until after I get this on PlayStation and on Steam. Like, and basically once it's done, like once that's on the conveyor belt and it's like ready to go out or whatever, then I can invest my energy into putting it on other platforms. I had a talk with somebody, actually one of the co-founders of the Xbox Live Arcade, which was like kind of cool.
Yeah.
This was last week, and he, I was like, yeah, maybe we could like do something on Xbox, and he's like, but I don't want to take away from your development. I'm like, no, maybe I can. He said, and his response was like, you might be spreading yourself too thin. And I was like, actually, I'm not going to take on any extra commitments. I'm just going to do these 2 platforms for now because I really just want to release the game. Like I want to finish and release the game. Yeah.
You are aware that there's only 24 hours in a total day, right? And yet you're able to do all of this as essentially the very definition of a sole proprietor. You are the dev, you are the marketing department, you are all of this, right?
Marketing, actually, I've had help with marketing the last couple of months. I it took me an emotional breakdown to get to the point where I was like, all right, I'm spending money on somebody else to help me with this game. Like I totally lost it. And then I hired somebody.
Yeah.
And now what I'm actually looking for is for a social media manager, so somebody to like actually do the posting. Basically, like I understand what my goal is for Limelight, like what my sales goals are. Because I don't want to just release it and like this is the product that I made and I hope everybody likes it. It's like I want to release this and then I want to make the next game and I want to have more people on the team for my next game. I want to like have maybe like a team of 2 or 3 people or maybe 4, so I can do more. I can like expand my scope and my vision because I can't like I'm only one person. I have like I'm bottlenecked by my time and also mental resources. So, but sorry, rewinding a little bit. Yeah.
No, yeah, good.
So I'm still in the works of finding somebody to do the marketing supervision, but everything else, literally everything else, I don't play test my own game,
Okay.
because I'm the developer, and that's
Right.
how that. But
Right.
like yeah, pretty much everything else is me.
So, how much in the way of man hour have you spent on this game from say from concept to completion? If you could give me at least a ballpark, because it's always interesting to hear someone say, "Yeah, my game's really minimalist, but it took me 10 years of my life to do."
Hmm.
So, what if you can give a guesstimate?
A year. I mean, it's
Just
been a year almost. I left my last company, Arcadium, at the end of May 2015. I sort of like half took off for about a month and a half. I was like, sort of part time. I just wanted a break, basically. I was like, I just left my company. Let me just like exhale for a little bit first. And then I started picking up Limelight. That said, it's like it's been pretty much full time. There have been periods of time, like all of January and half of February. I wasn't working on the game. I was doing minimal things. Excuse me, like tweaks for the trailer and like actually developing the trailer. Like prepping for Greenlight and all these other things. I was taking care of all that. So it was a long period of time, like 6 weeks. But I discovered this in retrospect. I was like, wait a minute, I haven't worked on the game in like a month and a half. No wonder I'm like miserable right now. So then I wanted to make sure that I had like working on the game as part of my normal routine.
yeah.
I think the cleanest answer is just to say a year that I've been working on this.
Yeah. And in that time, have you been doing anything else? Because again, to dispel some of the myths, you can have a day job and be working on a game and game development. You don't have to devote all of your time to it, or at least that's what we found in a lot of these dev talks. Is that how things have been going with you? Like you have a day job to pay the bills, and then this is your nirvana. This is your club med. You work on this when you're getting overstressed.
No, actually, this is my full time thing.
Okay.
I'm the opposite end of the spectrum where I like
Yeah.
have savings, left my job. I haven't earned
Nice.
money since
Nice.
May, like last year. It's been almost a year.
Yeah.
That's why I'm living at home with my dad. Hence the China.
Of
The place
course.
comes with fine China. Just saying.
Yeah.
Anyway, so it does come with a complete social isolation. Not quite, but
You
it
said
is.
there's a window just to your right, where you can at least
Sometimes
see
there are
stuff.
people outside.
Sometimes it's kind of like an aquarium thing where you're just like scratching at the glass or something.
Like, no, I do get out sometimes. I mean, the last couple of months I was at conference. Like, I was only home like 2 or 3 days a week. I was just somewhere else most of my time. But yes, for me, it's been my full time thing, and it's actually like most people that I've talked to have almost been surprised by that. Because I guess it's just I don't know like the people that you've talked to, but at least recently, a bunch of people I've interacted with, it's not their full time thing. It is just one of the things that they do.
Yeah.
For me, like I don't know, my style, I work best when I like just silo in and just go. Which is why it's been a little bit challenging because I've had a lot of non-dev related tasks, including like big one is paperwork and email follow-ups and like like finding marketing strategists, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, so like my strength, like yeah, I feel like I've answered your question. I feel like also all my answers end in yeah.
They get there eventually. It's okay. It's a long journey. Why not everything else be a long journey? What is next for you? Because right now it's again sole proprietorship. You're developing the game under your own name. Is there any intention of ever building an actual team or building an actual company around it, or is it always just going to be just you? And the second part of that question, what is the future for Limelight? It's not even released yet, but what do you want to do after? In a perfect world, what do you do after it releases?
Um,
Big question.
have a glass of whiskey. No, just lay back and drink some lemonade. Like after Limelight, honestly, I haven't thought about that. Some people have asked me that before, and I just don't have the mental resources for it. Anything that doesn't directly contribute to me working on the game or getting it towards getting finished, odds are it's taking a backseat. So that includes like my future after Limelight. I have an idea of how I want the sales to go, and I also have a tremendous amount of content that I'm dying to work on. I really want to make, and there are these new mechanics and ideas that I have for the game, and I've prototyped some of them, and some of them are so cool. But I realize, like, man, if I start pursuing this, I'm never gonna finish the game. Like, this would
It'll be
add
a
like
distraction.
exactly. It'd be a very fun distraction, but it would just take out so much of my, I wouldn't finish the game. So I'm considering DLC for that.
Okay.
To just add, like, it's sort of like Monument Valley had like that DLC.
Mm-hmm.
I guess it would be like, or Limbo. I think Limbo also had DLC. But it'd be somewhere in that vein, basically, where it's a puzzle game that just releases more content later on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. As far as recruiting a team of people, yes, but that's the answer to that. And then the expanded version of that is I don't want to. I can't do everything I want to do alone. I have these ideas that I want to execute, but I'm just one person again, and I need help doing a lot of stuff. And there's a lot of stuff I'm not that great at. Like I'm a decent problem solver, and that's sort of like that's become like probably my number one role is just like figuring out how to make certain things happen.
Right.
And in the process, I've realized, like, first off, marketing is like, it's not my natural state. Because also, like, I'm not good at I have a big ego, but I'm not good at
I
advertising.
don't think it's most people's natural state. Nobody really wants to feel like they're bragging all the time, because that's basically what marketing is.
Yeah, I feel like my dog just drank a lot of water, and
dogs will do that.
Just put his jaw on me as he does sometimes. I don't know why he does that. He doesn't do that unless he just drank water.
Just share.
Like, it's like evolutionary. He wants to dry off or something like that. Yeah. Why?
Okay. You are a walking sponge. That's how dogs are. At least he didn't drink a lot of water and then hork it up like they tend to.
Way weird. But yeah, I do want to hire a team of people to help me. But it would not, like, I'm not planning on building up a company. That's not what I'm planning on doing. I'm planning on hiring help as I need it to do certain things. Like, one of the things that I realized, there are two big roles that I didn't anticipate I would need over the last couple of months that I discovered I really need. One is a producer. That I can probably sort of fill on my own if I get my shit together, I guess. And then the other is an office administrator, like just somebody to manage and follow up with all the emails. Basically, anything that punctures my uninterrupted time, having somebody else fill that role, it would be invaluable for scaling up my productivity. I don't foresee hiring anybody to help with programming. Maybe I might, but yeah. But to answer your question, yeah, I would like to have more help, and I'm hoping and sort of anticipating like that the sales of Linelight will enable that, because what I'm looking for is just sustainability. Like, I want to continue making games. If it doesn't work out, then that's okay. I'll find another way to earn money, and I'll try it again. But I'm hoping that Linelight will do well, and that I can do this. But I don't want to like scale up an empire or anything, because I'm not a business guy. I'm not a businessman. Yeah, I'm a developer.
That's totally understandable. And, the main reason I ask that is because, like I said, we have a lot of people that watch these talks, and often enough, I'll occasionally get an email that says, hey, I really liked the last talk, but I'm curious as to how to get into the industry. How would my skills work? I'm not a coder. I don't do art design. I don't do any music. There's a lot of boring administrative stuff behind the scenes anyway, and some devs are good enough to do it all, or some have the energy to do it all. Obviously, you have the energy to do all of it, but you know what your strengths are, you know what your weaknesses are, so find people that play to your strengths. So I think that's just about all we've got to say about Linelight. Again, as a synopsis, linelightgame.com is where you can go to find out more about the game. You've got videos on YouTube, I believe. You did a developer stream recently. You're doing the interview right now. You've done PAX. Whew. Now might be the time for you to take a break.
An article on Polygon that was just released.
Article on Polygon. Yeah, you're just everywhere right now. So Is there any place you haven't been yet?
Um, on a couch. No.
On a couch.
No, that's actually not true. I totally sit on couches sometimes.
Well,
I have
very
couches in
soon.
the house.
Well, I would imagine sometime around September, once it's released, you can finally take 30 seconds worth of breath and then work on the next thing.
Yeah. I
Sounds
mean,
like it's the overall plan.
I want to continue working on this. Like, this game's a lot of fun to make.
Yeah,
And I have so many cool ideas for it. But I'll think about it in the future. Right now, I have very specific agenda and priorities, and that's what I'm focused on right now.
understandable. So, linelightgame.com is the link to the game. Linelight looks amazing to me. It's very minimalistic. It's gorgeous, and even being minimalistic, you can have something beautiful. I think the nicest bit is how much it just reminds me of a bunch of LEDs running all over the place. But thank you so much, Brett, for joining us today. I'm going to do a couple of real quick spiels, and then we'll be done. If you like what we do here, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter. You can see all my rantings at slave2machine.com. You can also see some other rantings at OPNoobs.com. Every Tuesday at 9:30 Eastern Standard Time, we have the Should We Cover It show, where we go through all the best and the worst trailers that Steam has. And we sometimes have a little bit too much to drink while we're doing that, so it's always fun. And last but not least, if you think we suck, or if you think that you can do better, or you can help us, OPNoobs is a community. Everything we do is for you guys, by you guys. We're all volunteers. We all do this because we love gaming. We love the industry. Go to opnoobs.com, send us some hate mail, or hey, you can just write down there if you like what we do. You can throw us a couple of bucks, throw us $1 a month. I don't want to go all PBS here, but in order for us to keep bringing you these kinds of interviews and bringing you this kind of information, we occasionally need to buy ramen. And we need to start giving our writers some food because they're starting to starve. And they're getting weaker and they're not producing as much, so we need more. Anyway, Brett Taylor, thank you so much. Thank you for bringing the dog. That was probably the best part, and probably we got a couple of views just because I shut up while the dog was on screen. But I look forward to September 2016 when the game releases. I wish you all the best. I can't wait to see it come out, and we look forward to talking to you again in the future.
Excellent. All right, thanks for having me.
No, absolutely. So from all of us at OPNoobs to all of you people out there, good night, everybody, or good day, everybody, and we'll see you a little later. We've got some more interviews coming up very, very shortly. So goodbye. We're just going to be like a 90s sitcom. We're going to stare like this.